Perfect.
All right. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Doug, for the introduction. Before we get started, I just want to congratulate our young riders that are going to be representing Ontario and Maryland at the end of June. We have Lena Good, who's on Summer Bay doing her first Young Riders in the 1-star. We have a super experienced 2-star team going. We've got Avery Tallman, Safi Klotz, and Chelsea Lowe for Ontario. And then we also have Emma McHugh joining from Quebec. And all of those girls, they're on, I think, their second and third Young Riders. And then we also have Chelsea in the 3-star on her other horse. So we have a really exciting team. So yeah, it'll be a good time. And so it's good prep for getting ready for Young Riders. All right. So I did do a quick check. I have been doing FEI since 2005, so it makes me old. And I've done over 120 of them. So I have probably been eliminated or gotten in trouble for breaking many rules by accident. So from learning the hard way. So I probably a good one to learn from. So feel free to ask me anything at the end, and hopefully we can help you figure this stuff out. So probably one of the most annoying and confusing things is the naming of the levels. So you may have seen that there's a CCI short and a CCI long, and it's hard to really understand what the difference is. So a short format just means it runs the cross country shorter, and it's usually it takes less time. So you can have a 1-day, like Glenora is running a 1-day short at the end of July. So you'll do your jog and your in-barns as soon as you drive in, and then you'll do dressage, show jumping, and cross country, and then the day's done. And then you've finished your first FEI. Sometimes they run over more days, so you might still get there on a Wednesday or Thursday, and then finish on the Sunday. So it just depends on how big the competition is. But typically for short, you would show jump before cross country. And you usually just do an informal jog at your in-barns, which we'll get into in a minute. The long format takes a lot longer. Like for Bromont next week, we'll ship in on Tuesday. We'll do our in-barns on Tuesday. Wednesday, we'll jog and do any meetings. Thursday, Friday will be dressage. Saturday will be cross country. And then Sunday will be your final jog and show jumping. So it's a much longer period of time. And the cross country course is also longer. Just for terminology, a 1-star would be equivalent to our EV 105. 2-star is our old prelim or EV 110. 3 stars intermediate or EV 115. 4-star and 5-star are advanced or EV 120. Okay. So if you want to do an FEI, the first thing you need to do is get your passport sorted out. If you're only going to compete in Ontario and it's a 1-star or a 2-star, you can get a national passport, which is less expensive. So to do that, you still need to get your horse microchipped, and you will have to do the flu shots, which they have to do a primary round, which is 1 shot, and then 91 to 90 or 21 to 92 days later, you do a second shot, and that all gets recorded in this passport. The vet also has to draw in your horse's markings. So when you order your passport, EC will mail it to you blank, and then your vet fills it out, and then you mail it back to EC, and then they'll approve everything, get your numbers sorted. You'll end up having to pay for a horse number and a rider number, and then they'll mail it back to you. If you get a national passport first, and then you're looking to go and do an FEI in the States, you can just upgrade it. So they'll send you a new sleeve that gets you to an FEI passport, and you just pay the difference. So it doesn't hurt if you're not sure if you're going to compete out of Ontario or Canada. You can just get the national passport to start, and then you can always upgrade it without having to buy a whole other passport. If you are thinking you're going to go to the States to compete or go higher than a 1 or a 2-star, then you probably want to just bite the bullet and get the FEI one. There are similar requirements for doing that. There is a
Kendal,
link.
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Can you just click that hide button at the bottom of your presentation to,
Oh, yeah.
there you go.
Perfect.
Perfect.
All right. So yeah, you do need to have your FEI horses have to have their flea booster every 6 months. That has to get recorded in the passport, but now it also has to go on your um, My Horse FEI app, which we'll also get to later. We have a link there, but I can send. Maybe I'll have Doug post some of the links later so that you guys can see all those things. Okay, so you've probably heard of an MER or minimum eligibility requirement. We do technically have it for all levels, like national and international. Uh, they're very strict on these in the US. In Canada, I don't know that anyone really double checks. So I think sometimes you can get away with not always meeting them, or they're a little bit easier than the US. But in the US, they definitely double check whenever you go to compete. And when you do your FEI declarations, you do have to put your MERs into the system so that they can approve you to compete at the international competitions. So it just basically means that you've met the minimum requirements. It doesn't mean that you're ready to upgrade, but you do need to meet these requirements before you're ready to, until you're allowed to compete at them. So dressage is under a 45, show jumping, no more than 16 penalties. You're probably all familiar with if you have 20 penalties now, you get a CR. So you're eliminated anyway. Cross country, 0 jump penalties and no more than 30 time penalties. There are some exceptions. Uh, for your MERs, you can usually have 1 pin and I think 1 flag penalty in there, but you probably want to have more than that for qualifications. Also, for the EV 105, you are allowed to have, you can qualify off 3 training competitions, but 1 is allowed to have a 20 penalties in it. So it just depends on the level. The details are all on the EC website, and again, if it's your first FEI, you will be uncategorized. But for certain riders, like Jessie would be a category A because she's got so much experience at 5-star, where I think I'm like a C. So I have different requirements than Jessie, and then for someone who hasn't done an FEI, they'd also have different ones. Means I would need to requalify a horse at a 3-star or something where she might be able to start it at a 4-star. So all those details are there. Okay, so once you've met those requirements and you're getting ready for your FEI, there's an FEI portal. It's a little bit confusing at first, but it's actually pretty easy now. They made it a little more streamlined. So you would click your entry section first, add the new entry, you choose your country and the month, and then from there it gives you a few questions. You input your horse's FEI passport, and then it'll bring you over the qualification center where you add those MER results. And then once you've done all of that, EC will go through and confirm that you've met those requirements for the level you've declared, and then approve it for the competition. Okay, so this is the FEI horse app. So like I said, you have to upload your vaccines prior to the competition now, which is new. So your vet, this year it's a new rule, so you can do it and then get it. The FEI vet will approve it when you get to the horse show, which is what they did for us at Terra Nova. But the vets also, like when we did our booster shots this spring, they can scan your horse's microchip and load it right away into the app, which is as of next year, they'll have to do all the time. So again, it's one of those things. It's annoying. You have to download the app and set up your horses, but once it's there, it's pretty easy. When you go to your FEI, one of the things that you wouldn't be familiar with is we have to do the horse's temperatures 3 days leading up to the horse show and throughout the horse show. So if you don't do that, you can get fines from the FEI. And you also, if you haven't done it prior to the competition, I'm pretty sure they just don't let you compete. So the main thing is for biosecurity and to make sure that your horse doesn't have any diseases and things that we should be worried about, If you got there and your horse had a temperature, they would quarantine you until they had looked into it more to make sure that it's doesn't have a disease that's contagious or anything. Um, and you also have a health form that's easy to fill out. It just basically says um, that my horse hasn't been coughing, hasn't had a temperature over the allowed amount, and it appears to be healthy. So it's just a self certification. It's nothing complicated. The one thing you want to do is make sure that the thermometer you use normally is the one that you bring to the in barns, because the temperatures can sometimes be a little bit different depending on the thermometer. So then, as long as it's consistent, then it's a little bit easier. And the vet will have you take your horse's temperature yourself. So um, you just bring your passport, and then you're the one that does that. Um, and then let's see. So then in barns, um, so this is when the vet just basically is confirming that it's the right horse that you've entered and that everything matches with your passport, everything's up to date, your vaccines are in there, the microchips match, which I did have an experience where they were one was written down wrong. They missed a zero or something, which in the end it was okay. But as I said, I've gone probably had all the things happen. So you learn the hard way. And it was just one of them was right and one of them was wrong. So it was all fine. Um, the one thing with the in barns, now it's a little bit more annoying because if they say in barns are between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m., you have to get there by 5 p.m. You can sometimes call and say you're running late and the vet might wait. But if you don't do your in barns before when you first get there, you have to stable separately before you're allowed into the real barns. So then your horse is by itself. You have to have different shavings and you have to remake your stall in another area once you pass the in barns. We used to be able to get in the stalls and then just complete the in barns before the horse show started. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're doing a horse show that's further away. Sometimes, like when we would go to Tryon, we would go up the night before, stable close by, and then go to the horse show the next day so we could get there in that time period uh, without having to leave at 2 a.m. So yeah, when you first get there, you it seems a bit mean. I still don't think it's the nicest plan. You drive in, you pull your horse off the trailer, you give the passport to the vet. They check your horse to make sure it matches everything. They're gonna look to see if there's anything notable, like a spur mark or any lumps or bumps or cuts. And you take the horse's temperature, make sure everything's good. And then for a CCI short, you jog the horse immediately in front of the vet. So just another thing to keep in mind that if you've got an old stiff horse that you've just driven 12 hours and you're going to pull it off the trailer and jog it immediately, maybe that's not in the best interest of that horse. So then if that's the case, that might change if you need to lay over somewhere so that your horse doesn't have to be on the trailer so long. Um, but typically the vets are pretty understanding about the fact that they've been on the trailer so long. So they just want to make sure the horse is sound to compete. So for your first jog, this is only for a CCI long. It's a formal jog. This is done in front of the ground jury and the vet, and they're making sure it's sound enough to compete. You can see there's a diagram for how you present. So you walk in, you halt in front of the ground jury, you stand in front of the horse. They make sure it's the same horse and everything matches, and same thing if there's any notable blemishes. And then you walk forward, then you trot in a straight line, walk before the end, then you do a turn, and then you get straight, and then you trot right past the ground jury. And then, best case, they say you're accepted. If you're not accepted and they hold you, then you go to a vet box, and another vet will look at your horse. They're not allowed to flex the horse, but they're allowed to feel its legs, put hoof testers on, watch you jog the horse, see if there's anything that's showing up that means they shouldn't let you pass, and they would advise you. Like if they thought your horse had some sort of injury that they were worried about, they would tell you. If they think maybe you jog too slow, maybe you jog too fast, they're not seeing what it is, um, they would recommend they would go and tell the ground jury that they had no significant findings and they see no reason you can't compete. So then you would represent, and then best case, the horse trots better, and then they pass you. They can still, even after the recommendation of that vet, they can still fail you and you're eliminated. So it's not a sure thing that you'll be allowed to continue. So the jog ends up being sometimes the most stressful part. But it is just part of the whole thing. Some jog strips are going to be on asphalt. Sometimes you're on gravel. Just depends on the horse show, but you do want to make sure that you're practicing jogging at home in a bridle, getting your horse used to moving forward off the leg, or just with you. And then, yeah, knowing how your horse is going to react, because if they don't jog with you, then they can look lame just because they're dragging. And then you also want to just know that they look good on cement, because if you jog only on grass or something, they could look great. But if you got a horse that's a little bit footsore, like a little thoroughbred, they might not look quite as good. So then that's something you can deal with your farrier if you need to add pads or something so that they're a little happier. Okay, so dressage, sort of the same as normal, but um, there are some different rules. With Canada, we typically follow most of the FEI rules eventually. So a lot of it isn't super different for us, but there's certain things that they will test or check for you, which is like the width of the bit, noseband tightness, things like that. So the bit has to be at least 14 millimeters, and they check it right where the ring, like where the metal joins the ring. So there are certain bits that actually get narrower as they attach to the, like if it's a loose ring, that metal part gets narrower, even though in the mouth is thicker. So I know some people that have been eliminated for that. So you want to make sure that that bit is wide enough. And you can go to your stewards, like they're there to help you. So if you're worried about anything, just take all your tack and show it to the stewards, have them measure everything, have them weigh the boots, all the things, because you don't want to get eliminated for something dumb. There's a new rule about checking noseband tightness. It used to be that you just had to put 2 fingers under the noseband and then it was fine. Now they have an actual measuring tool, which I'll show you on the next slide. Um, you're not allowed whips in the ring, which is we can have in horse trials. The tack check is after dressage, but again, you can always have them double check stuff before you go in. It's not a sure thing you'll still pass on the way out, but if you're worried about your spur length or any of your tack, you can have them check it first just in case. One thing, like these 2 bridles, the top one is a double bridle, the bottom one's a normal bit. On your FEI test, it'll specify if you're allowed to be in a double bridle or if it has to be a snaffle. So I think it's only actually 4 and 5 star that you're allowed a double bridle now. So just keeping that in mind. So this is the measuring tool. I think it's going to change the nosebands that we buy. It actually, if you have a soft noseband, it's pretty easy, but a noseband like this one is actually, it's a little bit stiffer and it's a crank noseband. And I found it actually quite difficult to get the measuring tool through. But I have a double noseband for cross country and I had no problems with that one. So it just depends a little bit on the material of your noseband. It just has to be able to get through the noseband. So you can force it and everything. But as you can see on the first photo, it's pretty thick and it's hard plastic. So you do need to check with that. Yeah, some of the softer nosebands were just easier to use it. Um, yeah, and you do have to, it applies for everything. So show jumping and cross country. So if you've got a horse that gets its tongue over the bit and things like that, that normally needs a tight noseband, you might be needing to play around with gear a little bit to make sure the noseband is still loose. But things like curb straps that are attached to the bit don't affect the tightness of the noseband. So you can play with that. So cross country, if it's a short format, usually you would do cross country last, but in a long format, it's after dressage. If it's a short format, especially, you have to trot in front of the vet at the very end. Like you just come back to you just canter and then come back to trot. They just want to make sure the horse looks sound at the end of the course. Um, they still check it at a long, but it's less. It doesn't have to be as formal because they're going to see you jog for real the next day. The long formats, typically you do a formal cool out where you have ice at the cool out and there's vets there checking your TPR. Um, some of those things they're not so mandatory anymore, but they are good to know how your horse is coming back. But they tell you at your meetings whether they're going to do a formal one or not. Because sometimes you have a horse that gets really lit up in the cool outs and it actually will cool out better at the barn, or if you've got a hose that can cool it out, it's a little happier than bucket bathing. So I put a chart here. This is on the FEI website, just so you can see the measurements for the jumps. So like I said, EV 105, 1 star, they're the same height as our horse trials. But if you go down further to the length of the cross country, each level it gets longer and longer. So the long formats are quite a bit longer, being 9, 10, 11 minutes versus the 6 minutes to 7 minutes in the short formats. So cross country, again, if you're doing this as your second phase, you're really trying to get those horses to recover well so that you can jog well the next day and show jump. You still want them to recover well if it's the last phase, but at least they can go home and have a break. So the big thing is with icing, it's not a great idea to throw them in buckets for the first time of ice at a horse show. There are many other ways to ice, but this is the main one that if you're going to do it, you need to practice at home if it's in the buckets. There's lots of ice boots and other options that the horses like a little bit better. This is just a little bit more effective when you're really wanting to cool them down. You want to make sure you're moving your horse around a lot. Like if it's a short format and you can ship into the horse show, if it's a long format, you are stabling. So a lot of these horses are used to being turned out a lot. So you're just trying to get the horse moving, walking them, icing them. You want to practice jogging, see where you're at. You do want to give them a rest as well, because they've just worked hard. But definitely checking in to see how they're looking after a few hours after cross country. Are they getting more sore? Are they looking good? So that you know how much work you need to do before the jog the next day. Electrolytes are your friends. Whether they have syringe type ones that you can give. If it's in the food, you can give them a mash. At the higher levels, you'll see a lot of horses getting fluids. That's just to hydrate them a lot faster. Sometimes you can do fluids even if a horse had a hard time shipping to the horse show. People will even do it before the show starts, but typically it's a post cross country thing. You are allowed to have certain medications given, like Adequan or Legend, to help them out for Sunday. But you're not allowed to have any injectable, like you can have the actual Adequan yourself, but you're not allowed to have needles with your equipment. Only the vets can have those. So you can give them the medication for them to give to your horse, but it has to be done by a treating vet. There are other drugs that can be given depending on what the horse needs. But those are all done by the treating vet. And there's certain forms that might need to be filled out. So then if it's a long format, and some short formats. So for the young riders, you're riding a short format competition, but they do run it with show jumping last. So you would have a jog on the final day. So again, this is done in front of the ground jury. It's formal. So you dress up and look good and present your horse. They're again looking to make sure the horse is sound enough to compete. There's certain things that they might be a little bit more forgiving on the last day, like if the ground was super hard and the horses are looking a little just footsore, you might find they're not quite as tough on you that day, but they still want to make sure your horse is looking sound and happy, because your horse has to go and jump around a show jump course. So again, you want to make sure your horse has been practicing. Um, that you can make a sound horse look lame or a lame horse look sound depending on how you're jogging. So it's really good to practice early. The horse in this picture, I practiced jogging for 30 minutes every day for 3 months leading up to Kentucky because even when he was sound, he always looked a bit funny. He had has two white socks on one side and just a stiff thoroughbred. I just had to practice all the time. We did technically get through the whole thing, so it helped. But you just have to know your horse. Some horses jog really well and they're easy, and you don't really have to worry too much. But it's yeah, just depends on the horse. And then on the Sunday, usually you're looking at a really early morning. You're icing, you're walking. Usually you're doing a pre-ride, just trying to loosen the horse up, stretching it long and low because like, if you guys do a hard work, your muscles get tight, so you're just trying to move that lactic acid. And a lot of times just doing a pre-ride where you stretch them long and low is really helpful. And yeah, a little icing, like maybe if they're a little footsore, so you throw them in some ice just to try to get some of that stinginess out. Um, and yeah, and then you're hopefully going to pass and go into show jumping. Um, so again, for typically before if it's a short, but last thing in the long formats. If you've never done an FEI, one thing to note is your show jumping is higher than at horse trials. So if you're doing a 1-star, you would jump a meter 10, a 2-star jumps a meter 15, 3-star meter 20, and up. So make sure you're practicing at home. You don't want to get surprised and show jump at the FEI and find out it's actually higher than you thought at the last second. So start practicing early. Um, for your boots, if you wear back boots and show jumping, you have to put those on in front of the ground jury. So you need a groom or someone there that can put them on for you. They're checking that there's nothing in them. There used to be, well, there are still boots, but that you can crank and that had things on the inside to try to help make the horses kick up behind. So they're checking to make sure there's nothing in the boots. And they're also checking to see your placement and that they're not too tight. After your show jumping, they do random boot checks as well to make sure the boots are proper and they're fitting well and there's nothing in them. And they can also weigh the boots if they're worried. You're allowed 500 grams per leg. So if you wear bell boots and a regular boot, then they have to be weighed together. The other thing to keep in mind in this photo, it's a very muddy day. That horse is not wearing fuzzy boots, but if you had sheepskin boots on that horse, they would get super wet and weighed down. So that would make that boot really heavy. So you really don't want to wear sheepskin boots unless it's a very dry day. And so that's something else to keep in mind with your gear that you get for your horse. The other thing for show jumping in FEI, you do have to salute. Okay, the fun stuff, drug rules. So both you and your horse can get tested. So you want to make sure you've checked all the medications for both of you prior, and some supplements can test. So you want to make sure you're really looking into what you're giving your horse or yourself. For humans, you can check the global GRO website to see if you're on any prohibited medication. Um, and you can apply for medical exemptions. So if you're on some, I don't know, an anxiety medication or something that maybe was um, banned, then you might be able to get an exemption because it's not really helping you for competition. So just want to make sure that everything's approved. You want to if you're taking human supplements, they do have some that say on them that they're NSF tested and approved. So that's a really easy way to make sure that you're safe. And there are anti-doping rules and rules for testing. If you've been listed, you have to take an online drug course every year just to go over this. But one of the main things that for Canadians now, just to keep in mind, marijuana is banned in sports still. So even though it's legal in our country, you are allowed alcohol. So that one's fine. Uh, so just want to make sure you check all those rules. This was one of the drug stalls at one of the horse shows where they would do a drug testing. At Bromont, they ship you off to another property to do it. But if you haven't done a drug test, they basically you go, they line you. You go with. You can take someone with you, and then you have a couple bottles of water. You fill out some forms, and then they get to watch you pee, and then you pee in a cup, and then you hand it back, and then they run the testing, and hopefully you never hear from them again because everything was clean. For the horses, they can also get tested, and with FEI, it can be both urine or blood, so or both. So making sure all your medications have been checked for withdrawal times, which your vet is your best bet because they should be up to date on all the newest times. But there's also an FEI Clean Sport app that you can check. There are certain forms that you can fill out, or that the vet can fill out if it's something that's controlled and allowed. Um, so you just need to look into those details. Banned substances you can never use. Controlled substances are allowed, but there's a withdrawal period before the horse shows. So certain ones are easy to find the withdrawal times, like giving a horse Storm or Ace and things like that. Some of the harder ones, which there was a question about EPM medication, and I'm just waiting to hear back from the vet about that one. Some of those ones are a little harder to find the details. And I think they're a little bit longer, the withdrawal time. So just your vet's your best friend on those ones. Okay. And then for preparation, there were some questions. So the big thing is, especially for a long format, if it's longer than what you're typically competing at. So maybe your normal horse show is 5.5 minutes to 6 minutes. And then maybe for your long format, it's going to be 8 minutes. So you're wanting to make sure your horse is nice and fit. So your horse shows will count as fitness runs, and they're really good to boost the fitness because you're galloping and doing jumps. So that really helps. I think the big thing is to know your horse. So you can do interval training, hill training, sprint training. There are other things if you're finding those standard ones aren't getting your horse fit enough. You can do things like swimming the horse or water treadmill or a dry treadmill. Um, all of them are really helpful, but I think you just want to slowly get to know your horse. The easiest way to get to know what's working is with a heart rate monitor. So that'll tell you. I've had horses that I'll go and gallop them around and their breathing never really goes up, and I'll like try to go fast and all the things. And then I go to a horse show and the horse is like heaving after cross country. And you're like, I've done all this fitness work. Like, how is it not fitter? But the fitness work at home is obviously not getting the heart rate high enough. So that means that you need to change how you're doing it. So maybe if that was interval training, you need to add in some sprint training, and it might be that you're still doing the intervals and then you're adding in some sprint training. There's also some people gallop every 4 days, some people do once a week. Um, Everyone's a bit different, and I think it really depends on what kind of horse you have. I have mostly thoroughbred horses, so mine get fit quite easily. So I'm actually usually trying to ride that fine line where I don't want them too fit, where I can't ride them, but I still want them fit. So you're just trying to get to know them that way. If you're only riding one horse and you're going to an FEI and it's a long course, it's going to be really hard for you to, as a rider, be fit enough to do the whole thing and ride well. So you want to keep in mind your own fitness. Those are long weeks when you're at them. So doing some cross training is always a good idea just to help your horse out so that you're not both gassed at the end of the course. Because a lot of times, if your horse has never done a longer course, you are helping them home. So the last minute or two, you're trying to help them finish the course safely. If you watch things like Kentucky, like the 5 star, you watch the last little bit of the course, and all those horses are so tired, and the riders are doing a really good job riding them and just trying to help them home, give them a positive ride, and just give them a good experience. Um, and then You want to make sure you have a plan with your team to make sure all your timing is good. So, like your vet work, certain injections have longer withdrawal times than others. Like if you do an SI injection, it's quite a long withdrawal time, where maybe a fetlock isn't going to take as long. So, um, you want to talk to your vet about that. Have soundness checks done so you can come up with that game plan. Maybe you've got a really big competition and you've got a fetlock issue that's always a bit of a problem. So you want things to be really good for the horse show. So maybe you want to push that one as close as you can to the competition. But if it's something that you're just trying to build up strength, maybe that one is just a little bit at a different time of the year. With the farrier, you really want to avoid doing anything the week of the horse show. You can get hot nails and things like that happening. So if you can have that planned a bit sooner is better. Make sure you have spare shoes for your horse show also, because if you lose shoes on cross country, you want to make sure they're matching when you put them back on. And then the farrier who's throwing them on, they don't have to mess with the shoe and you don't have to worry about them changing anything. Um, you might want to do things like chiropractic or massage leading up to the horse show. So just planning all that out. Um, and then again, just get to know your horse. You'll learn more each time you do these, but like leading up to the horse show, what does your horse need the most for your final rides? Does it need to gallop really close to the horse show so it's quieter? Do you need to jump really close? Does it just need flat rides? Or does it need a hack? Things like that. So you might have to experiment with it each horse show and you'll start to learn what works. And then same thing when you're at the horse show. I think something that's kind of important is that you get really caught up in seeing all these people on these beautiful horses and they look amazing and they're doing all these fancy things. So you kind of want to be like, oh, I should do that too. But maybe they're riding a day before you, maybe they're a different level. Um, and, one horse might do well with just hacking and less pressure. Another one might be a lot looser if you jump it the day before dressage or the morning of. And then others are going to be better if you stretch them and just do proper dressage rides. So it's just, when you see everyone, especially when you get all the big names coming in from the US and stuff, when you see everyone looking really nice and doing all these things, it's hard not to get caught up in the moment and almost get your horse peaking too early in the competition so that they're ready to do their dressage on Wednesday, but they don't actually go till Friday. And they just get a bit flat by that day. Um, you're going to want to check all your tack, medications, everything to make sure it's all within the rules prior to going. Budget wise, doing FEI is quite expensive. One competition is at least $1,000 usually for your entry fee only. Um, Plus, if you're going to the US, you need your paperwork to cross the border. Shipping gets expensive. Even if you own your own truck and trailer, it's quite expensive with gas and maintenance and everything else. And if you're paying a coach or a shipper, then it's also quite expensive. Accommodations, if you're Airbnb or hotel, a lot of these horse shows are almost a week, so it's quite a bit. Food, memberships, network, and you have to be prepared to pay for vet work at the horse show because you paid so much to already get there. If your horse needs an Adequan shot or it needs some fluids, it's it's not great if you have to be like, oh, I didn't build that into my budget. So you do want to have a bit of a buffer there just in case you need to do those things on that final Saturday. So I think I don't, I think nowadays you're looking at 30 to 50,000 to do an FEI horse. If you're doing higher levels, it's going to be more. So yeah, it's not cheap to do FEI. If you're able to stay a little bit more local, then you can probably keep it a little bit lower, but it does add up. Okay. Now we can get to the questions. I'm going to escape from this.
I think we only have one that I put in. Guys, please, if you do have questions for Kendall, please put them in the chat box, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. But Kendall, mine was about the fitness routine.
Okay. So what I was doing again, it depends on what you have available to you. I used to always do do interval training. So I do like a 20-minute trot and 3 5-minute gallops. This year I was really lucky and I had a really good hill to work with. So I did some interval training like that, but I also did some days where I would just sprint up the hill 3 times and then walk or trot back down. And I also added in swimming this year for the first time, um, which I think was a good full body workout. You don't want to do it really close to your event because you want to make sure they get any of those alternative fitness therapies and things like water treadmills and all of that. They're going to be body sore, they're new muscles. So you do need to give your horses time to get used to using those muscles. So start that early if you're going to do it. But I did add that in, and that seemed to be super helpful for a full body workout as well. And then I usually would just start the early in the season, like you're going to Florida, I started in January and just doing, if I'm doing intervals, I'd just start at like 3.5 minutes and then slowly build up to being at the 5 minutes and yeah, going from there. And then I make sure when I do it, I don't just go one speed. I try to sprint a little, like go a little faster up the hills, a little slower down the hills, and just go and keep moving them back and forth. I think that just helps with their heart rate, but also for you to know how to bring them back for the jumps really well. So I pretend it's a little bit more like a horse show. So I gallop forward and then I set up like I'm going to go to a jump and then I gallop forward again. And I think it just helps you understand how the horse is going to be on course as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
So we have another one from Julie about, she says, I know you have to declare for long format, but do you have to do that for shorts?
Yes. Now, if you had done an FEI in the past, you have to do it super early and you didn't really have to do it so much for the shorts. Now you do it for all of them, but you just have to do it by the closing date. So if you're doing Bromont next week, like me, you have to do it by today. And then it's super easy though. It's just basically you're just clicking buttons to say that you're doing it and adding in those MERs for them. Okay, there's the, and then Lena, yours is what needs to go on the FEI app. The vaccines you can do earlier. There's a way, once you put your horses, make their profile, you can add in vaccines, which is going to be taking a picture of your passport and submitting it. So it's fine if he's already had his shots, as long as they're in the FEI passport. You're going to take pictures of it and submit it, which it'll prompt you to do all of that. In the future, starting next year, it has to be done by the vet as they get their shots. So you just want to make sure you have your FEI passport on hand when the vet's coming. The flu or the temperatures are just starting 3 days out from the horse show. So you don't have to worry about it until you're getting close. Okay, and the memberships for the horse or for the riders, platinum for the riders. If you have an owner, they have to be platinum as well. So keep that in mind also for parents and everything. If you don't want to pay all the extra money, you might want the child to be the owner of the horse. But also you get owner passes if you go somewhere that's higher level. So if you get to Kentucky or something, then you do want more owners on your passport because they get owner passes. For the FEI stuff, again, when you go in and do all of it, there's a prompt to do your FEI membership. So I think it's like $20 a horse and $20 a rider to do your FEI memberships. But it should be on your EC profile. But you may have to start from scratch if you don't have the passport yet. Usually when you do the passport, it automatically gives you the horse number. And there's only one. It's just the FEI one's just a one-shot thing. Oh, what is in my vet box for a long format? That's a good one. So spare shoes, duct tape, vet wrap, halter, lead shank. Usually the horses can be a little hot and wild, so I usually have leeching with a chain so that I don't lose my horse when it's there. You have to, I did forget to mention, your horse has to have a number on at all times when you're at an FEI. So usually you put tape on your halter and you put the number on that. So I would have a halter in there that has the horse's number already on it. Towels. If there's blood, you can get eliminated. So if your horse bites its tongue or something, you want to make sure you have like a dark towel and just like wipe its mouth really quickly. And hopefully not going to be an issue, but you want to make sure you have all the things. Water for me. Usually I have like a protein bar or something in there too, especially if I'm riding multiple horses. I leave food everywhere, so I have snacks. Then lots of buckets and sponges and scrapers. My stud kit, bring a wrench, and I like those magnetic things that you can get from Canadian Tire that hold your studs. So you can pull the studs out as soon as you're done, or once the horse is cooled out enough that you can pull them. Just something to keep in mind when you're in the cool out. I leave the boots on the horse while the studs are in. So usually you want to get the horse cooled off as quickly as you can. So you're putting a lot of water on it, walking it a bit, more water on, walking it again. And then maybe the third time you pull the studs and pull the boots and then bath it again. Trying to think if I have anything else. Basically just like a little bit of a vet kit in case they lose a shoe or they have a cut. There's always going to be a vet there. So if it's anything bad, you're going to have the vet look at it anyway. So you don't need anything crazy vet wise, just a bit of vet wrap and duct tape's handy, or a diaper in case your horse loses a shoe. If you have any of those boots for a horse that loses a shoe, those are kind of handy too. Because again, you just don't want to be walking them too much if they've lost one on the hard ground. Yeah, I think those are the main things in there. Any other questions?
Oh, I don't think we have any more.
All right. I guess I could stop sharing my screen.
All right. Well, thank you, Kendall. That was very, very informative. I'm
Well,
sure I'll be bugging you for more answers as the time goes by.
yeah, and if anyone has questions, feel free to shoot me a message if you think of anything I missed.
And just for you guys who are online, we've recorded this meeting, so we will post it on the OEA website, and then I'll send the links to on social media and WhatsApp, and I'll include the links to the resources that Kendall had in the presentation, so you can check those out as well.
Sweet. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you very much, guys, and have a good night.
Bye.
Thanks, Kendall.
No problem.